Hello, Explorer. How you doing this morning? Come on. It is so good to see you here today. If you are wondering, what is spring? Guess what? You are in the right place. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this beautiful disclaimer. If you'd like to take a picture of it and read it later, please feel free to do so. If you are a speed reader, you're done already. Since I don't see any cameras up, guess what? We're getting started. Who is this Yahoo on the stage? My name is Glenn. I am a Broadcom engineer. I work on the Spring project, and specifically Spring Integration, Spring Batch, and Spring Cloud Task. You're like, what are those? We're going to learn about those. When I'm not doing that, I'm also on the board of Atlanta Java Users Group, which means I'm one of the folks that bring Dev Nexus, the largest Java conference in the US. So, and it's also all volunteer driven. I'm also what they call a Java champion, but I have hobbies, and if you ask any person on the Spring team, they will tell you what my hobbies are. They will say, Glenn loves to kayak, he loves to fish, he loves to garden, and he loves to play games. Now, when we think about games, a lot of times we have to set up our character, right? So I may pick a character for my quest, and as I set up that character, I'm going to give that character special skills. These skills help my character be successful in whatever quest I want them to go on. And then it was like a few months ago, I started thinking about when I write applications, my applications need skills too to survive in production, right? What are these skills my app needs, right? The first one is, there we go, it needs to have security. My app needs to be able to fend off cyber threats. It needs to have that authorization authentication. Oftentimes, I am using a data store, like a graph database, a relational database, a document database, and I need a familiar and consistent way to be able to access all the data that's in my application. I need special skills too when I play my games, right? I need that health packet to restore my health, something to make me faster, make me something a little bit more handsome, right? Our apps need that ability too. Our apps live in a distributed world. They can communicate with the worlds like, with things like Kafka, Rabbit, and protocols like gRPC and Pulsar and more. So we need to have those skills, right? They also need to have the ability to access what we call RESTful interfaces. So I can reach out to other systems and make API requests. So that's really cool for my app to do that. Now, there's this really funky symbol right here. You're like, what is that symbol, Glenn? I don't know what that is. That is what we call GraphQL. GraphQL's role says, usually when I have a RESTful interface and I make a request, my client app sometimes gets more data than it needs. But what if I could say that I could actually query an endpoint and get the data I want, reducing the amount of data that transmits from my server to my client? The cool thing is that helps me reduce cost. The other thing that we have is that when I'm writing applications, who's ever heard of microservices? Excellent. A lot of times our microservices also have to follow what they call the 12-factor principles. And these are things like external configuration, service discovery, circuit breaker, and the other, 9 remaining. So we need to be able to have that in our microservices. The other thing that we need to do is we need to capture metrics on our application. How is my app behaving in production? I need to know if it's throwing exceptions. I need to know if it's taking too much memory or too much CPU. So what I want to do is have my app emit these metrics, or what we call observations, to what we call an observation framework, which is set up to send alerts to people, let them know that there's a problem with my app before it becomes a problem, so we can get ahead of it. The other thing that we do is AI. I cannot be in this conference unless I say these 2 letters together on the stage. It is required that I do that. So a lot of times, for many years, apps have been doing AI for businesses. But with a generative AI explosion, companies are saying, how can I use this to help my customers? The thing is it's not just for the new apps. It's also for those apps we already have deployed out there. So we need to be able to include components of that in our app. Speed is critical, especially if I'm running in a serverless environment. And so I need my apps, if I'm running a function in a serverless environment, it's got to start fast. Similarly, I need to be taking my apps and looking how I can reduce the amount of memory that my app is taking so that I can put as many apps on my compute resources so I can reduce cost. These are things that our apps have to do in today's environment. How many people have heard of CVE? How many people have had to fix a CVE? How many people love it? Not a one. Dang, I thought being one person like it. We have to be able to support our applications to maintain sure they're security aware and also resolve them quickly. We need to have a place we can call for help, not only for our apps, but if you're running Java, also for Java, Tomcat, and the frameworks that we use. The question becomes, is there a framework that can help us with all of these? And the answer is, by gum, by golly, Spring can help us with that. Spring is an open source framework for building scalable, maintainable Java applications. The critical part about Spring is this. This is almost a skill in itself. It's designed to take lots of different technologies, all these technologies we see here, and combine in a way that feels natural. What does that mean? Spring simplifies your development experience. By giving you this familiar and consistent pattern to being able to create your application using Spring, it reduces the cognitive load on your developers. That means it reduces their learning curve, whether they're fresh out of college or they're been writing Go or C++ for years and they're getting into Java and they need to start migrating to Java. This Spring simplifies this process. Now, how does the Java community feel about Spring? Spring is the most popular enterprise Java framework in the world. It has been around for 23 years. Oh, gee, COBOL 2.0, right? No. Spring is vibrant. And let's put a pin on that 23 years for a second, because I want to introduce you to the foundation pieces of Spring, and then we're going to go back to that slide. The Spring framework is the 23-year-old component of Spring. It is the foundation for all the projects we're going to talk about in all the Spring applications in the world. What does the Spring framework do? The Spring Framework tool provides the tools that we need to build an application. Things like dependency injection, eventing, type conversion. We talk about data. We're talking about JPA, JPAs, JDBC, transaction support. It provides libraries and tools to simplify your testing. The other thing that it does is when it's time for me to write those RESTful services, it gives me the ability to do so through what we call Spring MVC, or if you are a reactive coder, it also supports it through Webflux. Now you have all these great tools that can start writing code, but Spring said, what if we could give you an entry point to make it easier for you? And so we created something called Spring Boot. And what Spring Boot does is it says, look, we will create the configuration and help you set up your tools, or the things that you need so you can start writing your code or start solving your business problem. And what we mean by that is it has something called auto configuration. The cool thing about auto configuration is that it's like this. Let's say I want to create that RESTful API. And that way I need to say, how can I do that? I can specify to Spring what Spring will call a starter dependency that will auto-configure all the things I need, including my Tomcat server, so I can get started and actually start writing code. What does a Spring Boot app look like? Well, before I do that, I need to say that you may say, is this generating code? Spring Boot does not generate code. What it does is it provides the configurations you need in order to be able to solve the business problems. So I'm starting from a blank sheet of paper right now. And that blank sheet of paper, I need to be able to create a project. So we have something called Spring Initializer that can be found on start.spring.io. From here, I can specify whether I want to have Java, my language, what build tool I want to use to build my application, what version of Spring Boot I want, the name of my app, the packaging I want, whether it's jar or war, the Java version, and then I click this little button at the right that says add, and I can add the theme that I want this project to have, and then I can have multiple themes. In this case, I want to have a RESTful service, so it says add the Spring web component. By doing that, I can then click generate. It will create a zip file, download it, and then I unzip it, and I'm ready to start coding. So like I said before, Spring Boot does not generate code, but rather what does it do? It creates that configuration so I can start solving my business problem. What you see here is a Hello World application. This is the main portion of my Spring Boot, right? This was given to me by the Spring Initializer, that thing that I showed you how we filled out all the information. I want to make this into a RESTful application. How can I do that? Well, I'm going to add a REST controller annotation that said this is going to be a RESTful application. Then I create a method that says hello, and it's going to return Hello Explorer when it's run. Then I basically tell Spring Boot through this get mapping that it says, hey, look, if they hit the hello endpoint, guess what? You're going to get Hello Explorer. So when I run the app and I go to my browser and I say localhost 8080, where's that 8080 come from? Spring Boot also gives us good defaults to start off with. So in this case, port 8080/hello gives me hello world. So how does the community feel about Spring now? Over the last 8 years, the Spring Boot has seen a year-over-year growth, with the last 2 months seeing record downloads. We're seeing more and more people creating more and more apps. It's not static, it's growing. And since we've been tracking Spring Framework, that 23-year-old piece, it's been growing 25% year over year. So more people are adopting Spring today than ever before. Now, let's go back to our skills. I need to add that security. When it's time for me to secure my Spring application, I'm going to use Spring Security Project. And it basically is the de facto standard for creating and securing my Spring applications. It gives us authentication, authorization. It prevents clickjacking, session fixation, and much, much more. When I said that I need to be able to add multiple databases to my application, and I want to have a familiar and consistent way of doing that, I'm going to bring in Spring Data. Spring Data's goal is to say, look, I can give you a familiar and consistent Spring-based model for data access. So what does that mean? No matter if I'm using a graph database, a document database, relational database, I can write one query, and that one query will work on all of those various databases. But they have a little subline under it that says, while maintaining the special traits of each of those databases. And what does that mean? That means that a graph database has these beautiful skills, and Spring says we can give you access to those, simplify those access to those special traits that a graph database has. When we look at adding the special potions to our app, that distributed part, whether it's Kafka, Rabbit, protocols like gRPC or Pulsar, we're really sending and receiving messages to and from apps, right? So we want to have a consistent and familiar way of what? Sending those. So no matter we're using gRPC or Kafka, the send and receive are the same calls, but while maintaining the special traits of each one. So if I'm trying to reach in gRPC, I can take advantage of special traits that that protocol has. Oh my gosh, we still have that GraphQL piece there. What does that mean? The GraphQL team, the people created it, teamed up with Spring, and we created Spring GraphQL. So whether you want to create a GraphQL server or client, we've simplified that experience for you. Microservices, the 12 factors, right? So we need one to follow those principles. Do I have to code all that? Not necessarily, because Spring has provided Spring Cloud, which simplifies your experience for being able to create microservices and make them 12-factor compliant. But before we leave, we talked about before, it gives us support for like circuit breakers, service discovery, and the external configuration. But how do we route the user request to our given app or to our microservice? Spring Cloud Gateway does that for us. Its primary goal is to give you a central location where you can configure where that app or how that request can get to the right service. It also provides security with that. It also provides things like the ability to load balance, rate limiting, and metrics to tell you how long it took for get from that app or for that request to the service and back. So it offers all these wonderful services. Now we talked about metrics on Spring Cloud Gateway. When it's time for me to make sure that my app can capture all these observations, and I need to send those to a message, to an observation framework like Prometheus or Graphite or trying to remember the other one, Datadog. In that case, I can use something called micrometer, and it can simplify the ability for me to capture these metrics, these observations, and simplifies me sending them to those observation frameworks. AI. So when it's time for me to add that AI to my existing app or to my new app, Spring AI's goal is to be able to give you an integration point that allows you to mix your APIs, your data with a model you've chosen. The cool part is that it says, look, I can simplify your access to no matter what AI model you choose by giving you a familiar and consistent way of accessing it. So no matter what AI model or generative AI model you're using, the same call is good for any one of them, but allows you to use the special traits that each module each model has, and it does also simplifies that for you. Speed is critical. Spring Boot always has, I think the last release is the upcoming release is 2x faster than the original, but we even maybe need it faster. So when I'm running a serverless environment and I have a function, right, for my serverless environment, I need to have the ability to have it start quickly. But wouldn't it be great to have a function that could start quickly and use the full strength of Spring? And there's a project called Spring Cloud Function that says, look, not only can you write a function, you can have the full power of Spring behind you, and you can natively compile that through what's called Project Graal. So it will take that function and create an executable from it, so it will start fast. And I can also natively compile my applications. And when I do that, it reduces their memory footprint. So when I put them into run them, it reduces the amount of memory so I can put more apps into a compute resource. And finally, call for help. When it's that time for CVEs, you want to go to one location to get support for that. And this company supports Java, Tomcat, and Spring, because this company is the company that produces the CVEs for Spring. It is also the company responsible for issuing those bug fixes for Spring as far as CVEs. So when it's time for support, call us. All right. Whoa, my character changed. What happened? You know, sometimes when I play a game, I may have a character that's not fit for the quest. The last thing we saw was a long-running process character. That's an app that starts up and does not stop until an external agent like me shuts it off. Sometimes we have applications that start, do their work, and terminate. Those are what we call ephemeral apps or short-lived apps, or batch applications. Many of us are running those batch applications in a production environment. We may be moving them off of a mainframe onto our services to reduce cost. So do I want to write a lot of boilerplate code? No, I want something that's going to do that for me. What if I said there at Spring Batch app says, look, or a Spring Batch project says, look, what if I could do this for you? Allow you to code the configuration you need so that you can configure how your batch will be handled. So I don't have to write my readers and writers. So whether I'm reading from an FTP server and insert to a relational or a Mongo database, those reader and writers are provided for me. All I have to do is configure them. When it's time for me to be able to do transaction support, do I have to write all that? No, I can configure it. And when I want to be able to say, you know, I'm processing 1 million records and it fails halfway through because the database went down, I can pick up and start off where I left off. All that's configurable through Spring Batch. And finally, we talked about how an application can live in most applications, even our monoliths, live in a distributed world. We need to be able to handle those things that simplify us living in that distributed world. A number of years ago, there was a book came out called Enterprise Integration Patterns. And the Enterprise Integration Patterns goal was to say, here's just about 60 patterns that you need so that it shows the successful ways you can have your apps communicate with each other. What if I said that we took that book and created an implementation of it called Spring Integration? So when you need to apply those enterprise integration apps to your patterns to your apps, Spring Integration is there for you. So please take your survey, and I have 2 favors. One, I'm going to screw up my survey because I'm giving you all homework. Yes, homework. Wait a minute, are we in school? Sort of. In this case, the homework is, if you have questions, come see me. If you say, look, I need a little bit of time with you, just maybe 15, 20 minutes to see, I have a lot of questions about Spring or maybe how we can use Spring, set up a time with me, and I could, during the next 3 days, I can meet you over here and be able to meet with y'all for an extended period of time to talk about Spring. With that, folks, one favor. When I take a picture, right, of the audience, what I want you to do is make yourself look big by going, ah! Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3. Arms up. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. No, 1 more, 2, 3. Up, hands up. Yay! All right, folks. Have a wonderful, wonderful conference. Thank you for coming.